Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambeau channel. This morning, Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse said, and I quote, "Watching this clip makes my blood boil." And what was he referencing? He was referencing a video clip over the summer from a former SEC chair and current asshat, Jay Clayton, that damn snake. And I'll tell you this, Brad Garlinghouse has a perfectly reasonable response, and it seems that now that the suit against him is completely over, he's certainly not concerned about being vocal about certain figures that put him in a certain situation. You know, it would be, I mean, of course, all of those pricks over at the SEC and the battle that went on for over 2.5 freaking years. I've got a couple comments from attorney John Deaton and also a comment from Stuart Alderati, who, of course, is Ripple's chief legal officer, having to do with comments from SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce. She is, of course, one of the 5 commissioners that gets to vote on whether or not to sue an entity or an individual, so on and so forth. I'll tell you, she is one of the only individuals pushing back against the current approach that the SEC has been taking towards crypto. And not everybody is happy with how much she's been doing, but she only has so much power. So from my perspective, on the whole, I'm broadly happy with what she's articulating because she doesn't have special powers to actually change anything. There are certain instances where I've thought, okay, you could say a little bit more on this or that. So there are certain instances where even if you're harsh on Hester, I'd probably agree with you. But it's nice to have a voice like that at a minimum. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so here's a post from June 28th, and this is from Cameron Winklevoss, one of the Winklevi twins, and of course the one of the a co-founder of the Gemini cryptocurrency exchange. And he shared this clip of Jay Clayton speaking on CNBC's Squawk Box program. And during this clip, which went for 55 seconds, and I didn't bother transcribing it, or I'm not going to play it. It doesn't need to. Here's all you need to know. What Jay Clayton was saying in this clip is he was being critical of the SEC. Now that he's not in charge, he's being critical of the SEC, even though the SEC today is broadly engaging in similar behavior to what it was under Jay Clayton. It's just been more intense. It's been way worse in terms of magnitude, but directionally, the same damn thing in many ways, anyway. And so Jay Clayton in this clip was saying that the stance of the SEC is basically, if we're not losing cases, if we're not losing lawsuits, then we aren't suing enough businesses. And Cameron Winklevoss notes, this is a total abuse of power. And Jay Clayton was saying the same thing. Like, it's a total abuse of power. And that's correct. But again, that's what was happening under him. So it is so rich hearing this. And it really set off Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse. So this morning, today, Brad Garlinghouse watched this clip and he wrote the following. "Watching this clip makes my blood boil. The hypocrisy is shocking. CNBC, Squawk Box, should be calling him out for the BS." And I'm censoring that in case there's children's in the background. And then he says, "As a reminder, Jay Clayton brought the case against Ripple, me, and Chris Larson, and left the building the next day." Right, and so he had to have known that this was, to put it politely, would be to say that the SEC was, trying out a novel theory. But that's garbage. They were trying out something that they knew were outside of legal precedent, outside the confines of the law. They didn't care. The embodiment theory, all this crap, that's more than just a novel theory. That's an attack vector. That's exactly what this was, and he knew it. And if not for the case that there is an administrative change, with the Biden administration coming in, he would not have been leaving that day, which means that Ripple wouldn't have been sued then. They were probably still getting their ducks in a row, but he realized that he was leaving, the time was up. He wanted to make sure it happened. He wanted that attack against Ripple, harming the XRP community, so he did it. So it is rich to see years later him sitting there saying on national television on CNBC, "Oh, look at this SEC. Oh my God, what an abuse of power. What an abuse of power. If we're not losing cases, we're not suing enough businesses." And then he says that may be okay in private litigation, but when you have the power of the entire federal government behind you, it's not so fine. And so I would agree that it's not fine. But what were you doing when you were at the head of the damn agency? And so I responded to Brad Garlinghouse and I wrote, yep, it's all repulsive. The good news is that despite Jay Clayton's best efforts to destroy you, Chris, and Ripple, he failed. But CNBC is protecting Clayton, completely unacceptable. And so my understanding is that Jay Clayton is still a paid contributor for CNBC. So he's just, he's not going to receive friendly fire there. That's what's happening here. But what a disgrace over at CNBC, right? Absolutely disgusting. Here's what Attorney John Deaton had to say about this. The amount of restraint that Brad Garlinghouse is showing here has to make Stuart Alderati very pleased with his CEO. It also demonstrates that I probably lack the temperament required to lead a top fintech company in today's world. You have to remember, Clayton, Hinman, and Mark Berger were the driving forces behind filing the case against Ripple. Clayton was clearly the one who pushed to sue Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson, as he is on video with Joe Grundfest saying that even in non-fraud cases, he likes to sue the executives because it changes the dynamics of the lawsuit, i.e., it's a bullying/intimidation tactic. Grundfest, however, warns against engaging in such tactics because it raises the burden on the government. So folks, think about this. There's that video clip where Jay Clayton, now that he's not in charge, he says, hey, it's an abuse of power. You shouldn't be suing so much that you expect to lose. You shouldn't be doing that. Yet you have a separate video clip of Jay Clayton, and I think it was while he was SEC chair. I think it was just early on, while he was SEC chair. He says that he likes to go after executives because it changes the dynamic. So there you have the power of the federal government coming at you. And it's a bullying tactic. He's acknowledging it. What a gross human. So now he's pretending like that type of behavior is disgusting, but he was all for it on video before. It's conceptually quite similar, is it not? Of course it is. And then Attorney Deaton continues, and he says, speaking of Grundfest, here is his pre-suit letter to Clayton, pleading with Clayton not to sue Ripple, alleging XRP was a security while giving ETH a free pass. He warned it would destroy the lives of innocent holders with no connection to Ripple. Remember, Grundfest acted as liaison to the SEC for Stephen Narioff, Vitalik Buterin, and Joseph Lubin. Grundfest himself called into question the true motives behind filing the lawsuit, I guess thus making him ETHgate's first conspiracy theorist. Finally, when you consider the hypocrisy of Clayton's remarks, remember, he filed a lawsuit claiming all XRP from the beginning of time until the end of the world was, is, and always will be securities, even though the SEC couldn't cite a single case in history to support this absurd claim. The SEC actually time traveled and went into the future and said that even if a foreign country one day adopts XRP as legal currency, it won't matter. XRP would still be a security, and anyone owning it would be in a common enterprise with Ripple. That's right. Clayton and his cronies went so far as to usurp or void the sovereign powers of foreign nations. Anyone who supports or minimizes this kind of behavior from regulators just because you don't like the target is part of the problem. And okay, now he's hitting the nail on the head. Well, he always is. But it made me think of Bitcoin maximalist Max Kaiser. He's allegedly against these types of government behaviors, except for when it's against a competing coin, because he's a toxic Bitcoin maximalist. And then he's all for, oh, no, SEC's fantastic now. Absolutely fantastic. Here's a headline from the Crypto Basic. Ripple CLO reacts to Hester Peirce criticism of SEC enforcement action against Library. Ripple CLO Stuart Alderati suggests that SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce needs to speak out louder and sooner when injustice prevails in non-fraud cases. Stuart Alderati, the chief legal officer at Ripple Labs, has reacted to a recent dissenting opinion issued by SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce regarding the regulator's enforcement actions against Library, a blockchain-based content sharing platform. In a statement issued yesterday, Peirce disclosed that she has been unsettled by the SEC's enforcement actions against Library, which was introduced in March 2021. Notably, a federal judge ruled in November 22 that Library violated the law by selling unregistered securities in the form of library credit, or LBC for short. Although Library appealed the decision earlier this year, the blockchain company voluntarily withdrew the case, citing heavy debts due to high legal costs. The company also announced that it will wind down and its assets placed in receivership to settle debts. Commenting on the development, Peirce noted that the demise of Library illustrates the consequences of the SEC's misguided enforcement actions. She described the case as puzzling, adding that both the SEC and the court did not indicate that Library committed any fraud. Quote, "Why go after a company that sold a token for a functioning blockchain with an established use when we could have pursued plenty of other projects that were outright frauds and did not attempt to comply with the securities laws?" And that was a quote directly from her. Excuse me, folks. And here's what Stuart Alderati had to say. "Thank you, Commissioner. When you see injustices like this continue in non-fraud cases, while consumers wait for recourse from actual frauds, perhaps it's time to let ordinary rules of protocol go by the wayside and speak out louder and sooner? Question mark. Perhaps even with an amicus brief? Question mark. And so yes, I would love to see. I would have loved to have seen more. Who wouldn't? Not that Stuart Alderati is going unreasonably hard on her. Not even close, obviously. And I don't either. Some people do, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their own subjective opinion. That's perfectly fine. I mean, she's infinitely more vocal than anyone else that works at the SEC, and she happens to be a commissioner. So she's already way outside the realms of whatever the norms are over there. She's far outside. And would I like more of that? Yes. So I'm not disagreeing with Stuart Alderati. It would be great. And even going outside of what the norms, our protocol would call for, I wouldn't be against that. So I don't know what the consequences for her would be necessarily on a personal level or what that might look like. But obviously, having had my net worth substantially harmed as a XRP holder, with that being my largest individual crypto holding, by the SEC, I'm telling you, since they substantially harmed my financial well-being, to a greater degree than any bear market could have, because I missed, and so did all of you in 2021, as long as you were here anyway. We all missed XRP hitting a new all-time high. I missed my opportunity for my life-changing wealth in that moment anyway. Not that it won't happen in the future, but I missed that opportunity. Like, this would have been done. I would have been preparing for another market cycle with XRP. I would have sold and bought a bunch more in all likelihood and have a way higher net worth right now than otherwise. And then the compounding effects because of the time value of money, compound interest, I missed on that. So because of the time value of money, I believe that the SEC has harmed me more than any bear market ever could have. Because bear markets you expect. This is something outside of what would have been expected here. And so, yes, don't take me wrong. I would have loved to see even stronger words and actions from Hester Peirce. But there's no one else like her that's even talking like this, really, at the SEC, especially in such a high position. It's not. All I'm saying is it's not nothing. That's it. Attorney John Deaton said the following. He reposted that comment from Hester Peirce, her entire post, because she linked to it on X. And John Deaton wrote the following: "Let me be less polite in my remarks. Any commissioner who voted to sue Library should be ashamed of themselves. But not just the commissioners. SEC enforcement lawyers who threatened to bankrupt Library and Jeremy Kauffman during the investigative stage by running up defense costs and legal fees are an absolute disgrace. The SEC conceded that most LBC token holders did not make an investment and only acquired LBC as a utility token to access the platform. My client, Naomi Brockwell, never purchased or sold a single LBC token. She didn't even meet the first Howey factor, let alone the other factors, yet the SEC refused to provide no action letters or guidance, making it clear that secondary market users were not subject to SEC jurisdiction. When asked by the judge, why wouldn't the SEC make it clear, since they acknowledged so many folks didn't own unregistered securities, SEC lawyers stated, quote, "We don't do that," end quote. But the real reason was because the SEC wanted to pursue its anti-crypto agenda. A total disgrace. Absolutely spot on. And then there was this from attorney Bill Morgan. The library decision is the most unjust non-criminal decision I can recall in my legal career. The conduct of the SEC and the decision of the court were a disgrace. You asked the question, and he's saying that this is what Hester Peirce asked, and this is a quote now from Hester Peirce. Why go after a company that sold a token for a functioning blockchain with an established use case when we could have pursued plenty of other projects that were outright frauds and did not attempt to comply with the securities laws? To make matters worse, the commission took an extremely hardline approach in this case. And then Attorney Morgan continues and says, you know the answer, and you gave it. A technology that enables dissent had to be stopped by a federal agency in the modern version of the land of the free. Great entrepreneurs had to abandon what they built. We salute Jeremy Kauffman and Library for fighting all the way. Spot on, Attorney Morgan. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.